Idaho has banned abortion, we all know that. But can we stop mail-order abortion pills? There is a new federal case that will determine that. Plus, an Idaho church wins its case after being thrown out of a school. Also, Idaho's school choice program gets an expedited trial. And if you didn't know it was on trial, stick with us for more on that. And Ada County's homeless rates go down. This is the Yocal Idaho Midweek Report. We're giving you an overview of the news you need to know in Idaho for the last week. If you couldn't tell, I decided to go a little bit more casual this week, a little bit of the brown, decided to bring back a old tradition, especially for, I think it's either October or November. I'll have to look. Someone in the comment section can let me know. We're getting close to local Yocal's anniversary, so that'll be pretty exciting. It's nice to have this little bit of the older pattern that we had. Just decided to go a little bit more casual. But that said, we also have some other cool stories. One of them is one that I think we've all thought about, is with all the growth that's been going on across the state and everything, that maybe you've had the thought of, should developers maybe pay a charge or tax or whatever for each new house they build to help with utilities and services because they're building them faster than would normally be created. Nampa thought of that very thing and was right online with you there, but they actually can't do that. Stay to the end to find out why. Also to get full coverage on these important stories and much more that we're just not able to get to in the episode. And there's kind of time limits. Each one of these stories, we sometimes have longer articles on. We just can't fit it all into our time constraints here. You can go to our website. And to ensure you're the most informed Idahoan in the room, hit that subscribe button so you can stay connected with our content and learning more about Idaho. With all of that said, let's hit our first story. A federal lawsuit could decide how women get abortion drugs has been moved from Texas to Missouri. Idaho Attorney General Raúl Labrador joined Missouri and Kansas to challenge the Biden administration's laxed rules that they passed regarding it that let women order mifepristone through the mail. As for the case itself, it started off with anti-abortion doctors where they sued, but the Supreme Court ruled they couldn't prove the FDA's relaxed rules harmed them. So these three states stepped in to continue the fight. As for what exactly changed between Biden and what was before and then what we have now, women can now get mifepristone mailed to them with no in-person doctor's visits. Idaho argues this makes it harder to enforce our state's abortion restrictions because these drugs flood in through the mail. If our state and the other ones win, the court could require 3 in-person doctor's visits and reduce when women can take the drug from 10 weeks to 7 weeks, which was what it was prior. The Trump administration hasn't decided whether to defend Biden's rules or side with Idaho, Missouri, and Kansas, because technically this has been going on since the Biden era. Now there's the Trump admin that's actually the technical defender of this case, and we know how the Trump admin is about abortion, so we'll see. They may actually just drop it. 4 of the 9 Missouri judges that will be seeing this case were appointed by Trump, and 2 worked on this very case before he elevated them to the bench, which also makes it a little bit interesting. And then coming back a little bit more local, the search for Boise State University's next president has stalled. On October 2nd, the search committee told the Idaho State Board of Education that it cannot present 5 finalists yet and needs more time. The committee claims it conducted, quote, an extensive national search, end quote, but lacks enough qualified candidates. They now want the board to, quote, revisit its approach and scope of search, end quote, with its consulting firm before moving forward. Now, this is something that wasn't particularly given in there, but we see it as a possible cause because of the news we've been reporting on, is that many Idahoans have pressed the university to choose a president who reflects our state's conservative, religious, and traditional values. Not yet another progressive leader like the previous president, Merrill Trope. As conservatives hoped that BSU would reject leftist leadership, Trope's tenure brought clashes with Republican lawmakers over DEI programs that pushed Marxist ideology, which resulted in about $2 million in budget cuts in 2025 and over $5 million in legal costs from the Big City Coffee lawsuit. The state board will discuss the next steps at its October 15th to 16th meeting in Lewiston. Granted, I will add it's a little odd for them to be talking about BSU nowhere near BSU. I don't know. Maybe there's something there. Anywho, Idahoans who want conservative leadership at BSU should attend the meeting or contact board members directly. Hey, one second. Have you heard about any of these stories happening in Idaho? If you haven't and you want to learn more about Idaho, make sure to subscribe and follow us so you don't miss any of our future content. And going back to the federal courtroom, but with a success here, a federal judge ruled that the Truth Family Bible Church in Middleton, Idaho, can rent a school gymnasium for Sunday services. Chief U.S. District Court Judge David Nye said that Sage International School and Idaho Housing and Finance Association violated the church's First Amendment rights when they canceled the lease. Specifically going into that and what happened, Truth Family had rented Sage's gymnasium for worship services since 2022. When Sage applied for a $15 million bond to upgrade the facility, state attorneys flagged the church lease as a potential problem under Idaho's Blaine Amendment. For those not familiar, that's the constitutional provision here in our state that stops religious groups from receiving taxpayer resources. Judge Nye rejected this reasoning. He wrote that the church would have, quote, only incidentally benefited from the bond's improved facilities, end quote. More importantly, Sage leased the space to secular music groups, but only targeted the church's lease, showing a double standard. Quote, a preference for non-religion, end quote, the judge wrote. Attorney General Raúl Labrador's office intervened and argued that renting space to a church doesn't count as giving, quote, aid, end quote, under the Blaine Amendment. The ruling clarifies that schools can rent facilities to churches without fear of discrimination lawsuits being leveled at them. Speaking of Idaho's school system across Idaho, they are now selecting videos to show students how babies develop in the womb. Why is this happening? Because of Senate Bill 1046, which was signed into law on March 27th of this year, requiring schools to teach fetal development to students in grades 5 through 12 starting this school year. The law aims to help students understand human biology while working to prevent unplanned pregnancies and reduce abortions by showing the humanity of unborn children through the accurate footage of fetal development. The schools must show high-definition video at least 3 minutes long that displays the brain, heart, sex organs, and other vital organs in the early stages of development. The Idaho Department of Education sent guidance to the districts in August, recommending 7 videos that meet these requirements. Districts can choose from several options, including the Baby Olivia video that Live Action created, or videos from the London Pregnancy Clinic and TED Talk presentations. Middleton trustees voted on September 8th to use the Baby Olivia video, while Coeur d'Alene let teachers choose based on a student's age level. Idahoans can engage with their local school boards as districts finalize video selections for the current year by contacting their school district to learn which videos they have selected. And we would encourage you to do so you can be involved and know what your children are being educated with. And if you'd like to be informed and engaged about what's going on in your state, or just have enjoyed knowing about any of the stories we've talked about, do us a favor and hit the like and subscribe/follow button. It helps us stay connected with you, and with that like button, reach more folks who love Idaho, just like yourself. And coming back to the courtroom, but also on school elements, the Idaho Supreme Court agreed to speed up a lawsuit that challenges our new school choice tax credit program. Chief Justice G. Richards Bevan signed an order on September 26th that directs state attorneys to respond by October 10th, giving them a little bit of a deadline. The Idaho Education Association and Moscow School District filed a lawsuit on September 17th, for a little bit of context, asking the court to declare House Bill 93 unconstitutional for the Idaho Constitution. They claim the state tax credit violates our Constitution, which requires states to maintain, quote, a general, uniform, and thorough system of public, free, common schools, end quote. If you've never heard of House Bill 93, it allows families to claim up to $5,000 per children or $7,500 for children with special needs, and tax credits for private school tuition and educational expenses, something that's used for private schools and can be used for homeschooling. The program is capped at about $500 million annually and is set to launch on January 15th of 2026. I will also add, if it hasn't already been said, our total education cap here in the state is in the billions, so $50 million is a very small amount of that. Two national groups, the Institute for Justice and EdChoice, filed a motion on September 29th to intervene in the case, which means they'll be representing the 3 Idaho families who plan to use the tax credit. Private and homeschool families now wait while courts decide whether the program can proceed as scheduled. And there again, this episode is apparently all going to be in the courtroom. When I was writing it, I didn't realize it was going to be that case, but I guess it's going to be. Judge Megan Marshall ruled Wednesday that Moscow officials must black out the bodies and blood in crime scene photos from the Brian Kohberger murders. This decision protects families after the city released over 180 blurry images that still showed the victims' outlines and blood. For context on this story, which we have previously reported on our website, after Kohberger pleaded guilty in July for killing 4 University of Idaho students, Moscow received more than 1,150 public record requests for crime scene materials. The city initially released photos with blurred bodies, but the families of Madison Mogan and Ethan Chapin sued in August, arguing these images traumatized them and invade their privacy. Marshall found that blurring failed because it still revealed the body's contours and invited speculation. She wrote that releasing these images served those, quote, fixated on unfounded conspiracies, end quote, while causing profound harm to the families. The judge did not seal all the records. Other photos and videos and documents can still be released, however. This ruling rightly recognizes, however, that graphic images do not inform citizens or hold government accountable in this case. They feed morbid curiosity rather than cultivating virtue in our community, which is the end goal that we should be aiming for. Have you heard about any of these stories? Did you even know there was a fight going on about the images from the Moscow murder trial? If not, please don't hesitate to share this episode with your friends and family, so they can be just as informed as you are about what's going on in Idaho. And coming into the home stretch here and out of the courtroom for once in our life, Canyon County continues to grow at an explosive pace, and city leaders across the area are wrestling with how to pay for roads, police, and fire services that new residents need, especially roads. Granted, they're figuring out how to pay those, but they're just not paving them quick enough. Anywho, last month, Nampa City Council explored whether developers should pay mitigation fees to cover these costs. But their legal team put brakes on this idea, and we'll get into that. City Attorney Preston Reuter told the council that Idaho law sharply limits what cities can charge developers. Unlike some states that give cities more freedom, Idaho operates under what lawyers call Dillon's Rule, end quote. Cities can only act when the legislature gives them permission. Reuter warned that trying to use fees to replace tax revenue crosses a legal line. For an example, he pointed to Star's mitigation fee system, which he said uses fees improperly to backfill tax shortfalls caused by the recent state budget caps. As for what they can do, the council can still collect impact fees for specific infrastructure like sewer lines and pipelines. Developers can also volunteer to contribute extra funds. Like, that'll happen. It'd be really nice if they did, but the city cannot pressure them to do so. Mayor Debbie Kleen raised practical concerns too. Using one-time fees for ongoing costs like police salaries creates problems when growth slows. Here in the Treasure Valley, it does slow, it just never freezes. The day that growth freezes here in Idaho, I'm just going to be shocked, but that's a different issue. After the legal briefing, no council member expressed interest in pursuing the mitigation fees further. The challenge of funding growth-related services remains unresolved as homes continue to rise across the county and the state as a whole. And speaking of homes and those that do not have them, Idaho County's homeless count dropped by 2% this year, with 773 people experiencing homelessness compared to 789 last year. So, about a little bit more than 10 people less. This decline reflects a couple of converging factors working together across federal, state, and local levels. Starting with local programs that deserve credit to help families move off the street, Catch expanded rapid rehousing beds by over 50% from 109 to 161 beds, focusing on families feeling domestic violence. These programs require people to work towards stability, not just receive handouts. And then on the state level, if you may or may not remember, we got a new law, Senate Bill 1141, which changed how cities address public camping. The new state law requires Boise to enforce camping bans, removing previous loopholes that let people camp indefinitely. This pushes people towards available services rather than letting them refuse help. And then on the national level, President Trump's executive order has also shifted federal priorities. The administration now funds programs requiring treatment and sobriety, not the, quote, housing first, end quote, approaches that place people in homes without addressing underlying issues like addiction or mental illness that got them on the street in the first place and caused them not to be able to actually maintain the house. This policy recognizes that true compassion means helping people change, not enabling destructive behaviors, dealing with the root rather than the fruit. When the government enforces standards and programs require accountability, people can find pathways out of homelessness. And speaking of pathways, I need to blaze one out to the beautifulness, which is Idaho, but I thank you for listening to the entire report. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If you like the Midweek Report, make sure to check out our other content on our website. We are working hard to keep that stocked for you. Also, if we missed any important information or provided incorrect points, please feel free to reach out to us via email or on Twitter by tweeting us at @LocalYokalIdaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.